Perfect.
Oh,
Okay. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. My name is Denissa Palmer on behalf of One People Toronto, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Adowa Toku. She is a farm education assistant for Black Creek Community Farm. It's a local farm, and she'll just be telling us a lot about what she does and, how she got started working there. So Adowa, thank you so much for joining us today. How's your day going?
it's going pretty well. I can't complain. It's Friday. The sun is out.
Yes,
Yeah, so
definitely.
I'm
I was
feeling
like,
good.
I hope, I was like, had to get outside today because I'm like, oh, the sun is, I need it.
Yeah, need it.
Definitely. All right, love. So we'll get started. Okay, so I guess we'll just head right into it. So tell me Black Creek, what is Black Creek and how did the company get started?
Yeah, so Black Creek Community Farm is an 8-acre property that includes farmland, a heritage farmhouse, a barn, and a surrounding forest that extends down to the Black Creek ravine. It's situated super easily within walking distance of 8 schools and also thousands of local residents in one of the most densely populated areas in Canada's largest city, so aka the Black Creek and also aka the Jane and Finch area. So it was founded with the help of Everdale Environmental Learning Center, Food Share, and African Food Basket. BCCF has operated as a startup focusing on improving food security, reducing social isolation, and improving employment and education since it first started in 2012. It's an urban agriculture center that we try to engage, educate, and empower diverse communities through sustainable food. In 2018, we joined Food Share Supportive Partnership Platform. And so we've been working under Food Share since that time. And
Wow.
BCCF uses a community model that encourages for community leadership in all its programs through things like the Farm Steering Committee, amongst other things.
Wow. That's a lot that you guys do in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, seriously, we're like a baby still, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. So after that, my first question, I guess, in terms of that is in terms of the area, do you guys ever find it really challenging for traffic and just that kind of stuff, or no?
Once I hope everyone gets a chance to visit the farm someday, but it's kind of this little place tucked away from the world where it's right beside a major road, but when you're in the farm, you can even barely hear the cars driving by. And it's it's right off of Jane and it's close to Jane and Steele's, I think. I'm terrible with directions. And
so am I, don't worry.
And yeah, it's just right off of Jane Street. And it's just you take a left on Jane and it's right there. So I think the surrounding forest and kind of that whole area makes it so it's kind of weirdly gentle, but I don't think we've seen too many challenges so far in terms of traffic or noise pollution or anything like that.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Definitely have to visit soon.
Please, yeah.
Definitely. So for before, I would say pre-COVID, and I'll ask pre-COVID and during COVID now. So what does a day for work look like for you?
Okay, so this is really funny. So I actually only started working during COVID. So I don't even know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I started working at Black Creek in February of this year.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'd always been familiar with their work and it just feels like a very dreamy situation for me to be here right now. But so right now, the days kind of vary from day to day, especially with everything that's going on with COVID. So most days it's emails and infographics and content making. We're doing workshop outlines and prep. Other days it's just straight up hosting workshops, doing programming, kind of getting into things like that. A lot of Zoom interactions.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And then some days we're on the farm, we're starting seedlings, we're starting to get the land prepared, we're transplanting soon, and just growing the food as well. So that's really nice that we get to do a mix of everything.
Definitely. So you said you just started working there recently. So before working there in February, were you always connected with the company, or did you work in farming somewhere else?
Yeah, so before last summer, I worked as a gardener in the city. So I live in downtown and I was working with Parkdale Green Thumbs. So I was working a lot more with pollinator flowers, native plants, and kind of doing eco landscaping and just taking care of plants in that way. When I first started learning how to grow, it was definitely with food. So I'm just really happy to be back growing food. But yeah, I was gardening last year.
So like when did you start? Like was it something that like your family had like implemented when you were a child or something
Mm,
you were just interested from like a young age?
yeah, so I've always been kind of like a very outdoorsy, like nature
Mhm.
lover, but definitely it was something that I kind of came into myself. Like my family, they actually make fun of me a lot. They like think it's hilarious that I grow food. They're just like, you're wild.
Aw.
But it's yeah, my family's, I think what like I've gotten with them is like a lot of like the importance of natural foods and like fresh
Mhm.
foods. Like my mom was super big on that growing up. And so I feel like that kind of all started like planting seeds within me for where I'd end up. But yeah, I found like farming and gardening and growing stuff by myself.
Wow. So sorry, can I ask what's your background?
So my family's from Ghana. I was born here,
Okay.
but yeah, I'm Ghanaian.
Oh wow. And they're laughing at you for farming?
They just think it's so funny, you know, because we grew up like I was born in the suburbs. I grew up in the
Mm-hmm.
suburbs, like
Ah,
you
okay.
know what I mean? So I definitely had to like find my nature and like go into and like kind of like it's like do more, right? So they're just like,
Yeah.
how did you end up like this? Like, you know?
Like the
Yeah,
black sheep, but it's
yeah,
good though, because like
yeah,
natural foods, it, like especially now, it's yeah, definitely
absolutely.
super important.
Yeah.
So what are like some of your favorite crops? And like you said, you have experience with like gardening and stuff. Like, what are your favorite crops and like plants to grow and why?
Mm. Okay, so some of my favorite crops to grow are I really love growing herbs.
Okay.
Berries, yeah. So some of my favorite herbs are like nasturtium and sagebrush.
Oh
I
wow.
really love growing those. Yeah, like nasturtium is one of the first things I grew when I started learning how to grow things. So I feel like I've always had this like deep love for it because like I
Mhm.
just know it very well, right? And like trust that I know it.
Yeah.
And the sagebrush, yeah, it's just like it's in my backyard. I love mugwort and I just really love how herbs have so many like medicinal and magical and like everything
Yeah.
that you can do with them. And I love sharing them with my friends and family, you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
those are some of my favorite things. Um, Something else I actually am really excited to grow this year is a few crops that are very directly tied to like where my family's from, like Ghana. Like
Yeah.
I'm trying to grow these garden eggs, which is like a type of eggplant from
Wow.
Ghana. I'm trying to grow okra and like yeah, just like so it's like this very weird like homecoming, but like
Mhm.
not, you know, especially with like being first generation and those in betweens that we all take up, like it
Yeah,
feels like a very intimate and like relearning of my own culture from a different way, you know, like through plants. So
definitely.
I'm really excited for what will come from that.
That's so amazing. That like it's so inspiring to hear you like even talk about so much plants and herbs that you know because you like named a few and I'm like, I don't even know if I know these ones. And like I was like, I don't think I know the first one that you said. So I'm like, I was gonna ask, what are they? Or like, what was the first? The sagebrush? Is that like the? It's like a
Yeah,
light white,
sagebrush.
like
Yes.
leaf. Okay,
So sagebrush is very similar to sage. You
okay,
know, it's just like a different. I would say it's a different family of plants, but they're used in the same ways.
hmm
The type that I have is actually like native to this land and to this like
wow,
area. Yeah, it's like a very specific variety. So it grows really well in the soil here and like with our temperatures and everything in that way.
hmm
So I I had been able to receive some last summer when I was working as a gardener. And yeah,
hmm
so that was like again another process that it kind of grew really intimately and I feel really trusting of it. And now it's kind of taken off by itself in my backyard. So I'm
hmm
just like, I love you. And
Aw,
yeah, I usually like dry them and make little bundles and like share them with everyone. And like, yeah, it's just like a very full process that I get to be a part of. That's like
hmm
really cool to me.
that's amazing and so inspiring to even hear like how passionate you are talking about it. I'm like, I
Oh,
that's
thank
one thing I
you.
love, like hearing people talk about like what they love, but being so passionate about it. I'm like, yeah, this is what you're meant
Mhm,
to do for sure.
mhm.
So since you started working at Black Creek, like what is your most favorable thing to do?
Okay, so very much so. I really like being at the farm. It's like
Hmm
it's so good and it feels really nice. And yeah, it's just like a really beautiful space that we get to be there and like put our hands in the dirt and really get into the full process of it all. So that's been
Yeah.
really cool. I'm actually starting to really love recording videos.
Oh, that's so
That
nice.
used to, like, when I first started, I was like, I do not want to do this. Like, I don't want to be on camera. But now it's like really cute to kind of make these little like how-to videos and make them my
Yeah.
own. It's like starting to have fun with it and get a little bit more creative. So
Yeah.
that's been another part I'm finding I'm enjoying.
That's so cool though, because like, and you don't even know how many people you really like help out until you get the feedback from them, and you're like, "Wow, thank you so much, guys." Yeah, that's so much fun.
Absolutely.
It's like I definitely
Absolutely.
will be asking for your Instagram account so I can like see these. I need help. Definitely.
Of
Uh,
course.
yeah. So like well, you honestly sound so passionate with like farming and stuff. So like what are like some of your
Mm,
personal benefits that you get from farming or just working at Black Creek itself?
mm, yeah, so I would say that yeah, but like one of some of the benefits I get at working at Black Creek is that I guess like in a dream world, the work I would be doing would be like bridging like earth, land, plant work with like challenging a lot of like oppressive systems so that people that
Mhm.
just like look at me, like look like me and my community and the people I care about can take care of themselves. And that in like a nutshell is kind of what I get to tap into at Black Creek. So
Mhm.
it's like a really beautiful experience where like yeah, I'm doing exactly the work I want to do. I'm farming, I'm growing things, I'm like skill sharing and like helping that knowledge kind of like get to everybody, but in the same way like with an organization that really like I'm in line with their values and their beliefs and what they really want to do. And yeah, it's just like a really great place to have all those things exist as one.
That sounds amazing. Sounds like such like a family unit that you have to work with.
Yeah, it's cute.
Yeah.
Totally.
I was like, I definitely want to
Yeah.
visit the farm.
Yeah.
COVID needs to go away. So have you always like, did you study farming or agriculture in school, or was it more of like a hobby for you?
So I actually studied sociology.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I went to Laurier and graduated with like a bachelor of arts in sociology and did all that. I finished back in 2017, and by the end of it, I was focusing a lot on environmental racism and like
Okay.
the individualization of wellness.
Mm-hmm.
But like that was kind of where my mind had started going. And when I came back, I knew I wanted to like be a part of things that were a part of that, or at least work in that, or like start to figure out how to bridge that a little bit more.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, I had gone a few different routes. There was like a few different ways I was seeing it go, but like pretty much right when I really realized I could start learning how to farm from a food justice lens,
Mm-hmm.
I like, yeah, I had always known that I wanted it to be a career path and like a journey. So it like it started off with that intention. So like for a few years I was like working multiple jobs and doing internships in the city, just trying to like
Yeah.
gain my skills and stuff. So this year and last year have been the first years that I've been able to just do like land work only as my like work. So it's been like
Mm-hmm.
awesome so far to kind of get to this place now.
That's amazing. So like long term, do you want to go back to like what you originally had like set out to do, or do you think like this will be your like end goal, I guess?
I mean, yeah, like I'm trying to farm for as long as I can, you
Yeah,
know?
definitely.
Yeah, like I think that this work really kind of gets into a lot of what like yeah, a lot of the things I learned in school, but I didn't necessarily want to end up in office work or like in a
Mm-hmm.
huge like bureaucratic kind of situation. And yeah, like the ways that I would like to share like resource and share my skills is very much with my hands, right? And farming
Mm-hmm.
gets to do that specifically. And yeah, through this lens of like food accessibility, of like, you know, gearing it towards racialized bodies, towards having it be something that does speak to bigger systems at large, that like that's everything.
Definitely, yeah. I was like, I definitely support it. So are
Mhm.
you a vegan or vegetarian?
I'm vegan, yeah.
Okay. I was like, I had a feeling. So the foods that you eat, like, does your diet consist of only foods that you've grown?
So I think I want to start by saying like I'm not a purist in any right. Like I
Okay.
really love being able to like get what I want from a grocery store. But
Exactly,
it's
yes.
been yeah, you know, like I'm not gonna play these games. But it's like it's really sweet and kind of cute that like just the way that life has gotten, like a large part of ingredients and crops that I do use on the regular is grown
Hmm.
by either my friends, my pals, or like myself. So
Hmm.
it's like because we live in winter and we have winters, and because we live in
Yeah.
Canada, like it gets harder. So there are local grocery stores that I like go to and have like a cool rapport and relationship with them, and like
Hmm.
we like chat it up whenever I go get like
Aw.
popcorn or whatever, so it's cute. But I'm super grateful that just within my own personal community, it's like super commonplace to either gift or trade like fresh or preserved foods. So
Hmm.
I'm like kind of at this place where pretty much anytime I'm eating at least one ingredient, I know who grew it and like I know where it's from, like
Wow.
from the seed. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that.
That's so healthy. How long have you been like a vegan for?
So I've been vegetarian for 10 years now.
Wow.
And within all of that, I just like pretty much the past couple of months, I've just been like dipping deeper into like I just don't eat like pizza anymore,
Hmm.
like that's really what it
Yeah.
comes down to.
Okay.
But yeah, so like now it's kind of like entirely plant-based. So yeah, but it's
Hmm.
been 10 years of the veg journey.
Does your family like, because I'm Jamaican and I was vegetarian for I think it was 4 years. So I played soccer. And I remember
Mm.
when I first started, like my mom kind of looked at me like I was crazy. She was like, what are you gonna eat? Because I'm not like going out of my way to cook stuff for you. And I'm like, I'll figure it out kind of thing. But did you ever get like that weird like vibe kind of thing from your family or just like people around you? Because you're just like I think I would say the stereotype is like black people don't like can't really stay away from meat or like chicken, let's
Totally,
say.
totally,
So it's like,
totally.
I got made fun of for sure. So like, did you get made fun of by like friends or family and stuff?
Well, I mean, like as nature would have it, my mom's actually been vegetarian longer than me. So it's
Wow.
been, yeah, I totally got it from her, right? So
Hmm.
I like growing up as a teenager, I already just like ate what she ate and she didn't
Hmm.
eat meat. So she would actually go out of her way to cook things with me because my brothers are like
Wow.
wild.
I was like, they're
So
boys,
yeah,
so.
exactly, So in that sense, I've always felt that I was always like, even like family dinners, like whatever, would
Hmm.
have you, like, because my mom didn't eat meat, there was always vegetarian options available. And that
Huh.
always helped me. Yeah. So I was always like,
Hmm.
okay, sick, I can eat. Like, definitely between my friends, like, there's like, there's been jokes. Like, I remember when I first became vegetarian and like, I was away at school and they were supposed to be coming up and I was telling
Yeah.
them like, hey guys, I don't eat meat anymore. And everyone started like ripping me in the group chat. They were like, yo, we're not eating pizza. Like figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, like you can eat a salad. We're gonna order all the pizza and wings. Like
Yeah, literally.
you
They're
can
like,
sit there
hey,
and
do
smell it.
you?
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. So do you find that like challenging when you're kind of around people that don't really share the same, I guess, like diet interests as you or no?
Honestly, not really. Like, I was like the only vegetarian person in most of my friend groups until like pretty recently. And like
Hmm.
now I have like a couple of more friends who stopped eating meat. So it's been whatever. But like again, like I'm Ghanaian, so I literally can't not be around meat. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like my brothers and my sister, and like it's still very much around my orbit. It's just like a
Hmm.
personal choice and kind of like a devotional practice that I've been like growing for the past little while. But yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't, I don't really like look towards like other people and their diets in that sense. Like everyone can eat what they want.
Yeah. And it's crazy because like I feel like a lot of vegetarians or vegans are like super like extremists and they're like, no, you should stop. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like you
And
got
I
to be
mean,
pro-choice.
exactly. And we can get into it. Like there are systemic, barriers, circles, issues as to why like we like no one should be telling anyone what to eat, right? So
Hmm.
I'm on that boat of like do what you can, when you want to. And that's
Definitely.
it. Yeah.
So you kind of like said something that leads to a question I have. I noticed myself because like now that I'm not a vegetarian, I notice a lot of like trendiness of vegan and vegetarianism. Like, how does that make you
Yeah.
feel? Does it bother you?
I mean, it's kind of cool actually because I've been so that was a lot of the thing of why I think it's been hard for me to actually like go into veganism entirely,
Oh,
because
okay.
it's kind of like a principle thing where I'm like,
Yeah.
what does this serve on a larger issue if like, you know what I mean? If we're talking about migrant workers, if we're talking about a lack of access to barriers to food. And so I've
Mhm.
been really lucky and grateful. You know, one of the kind of random things about the pandemic that's been cool is that there's a bunch of panel discussions and
Yep,
people are talking about great things. And so,
definitely.
you know, I've been able to listen into some conversations about like decolonizing veganism and like what it looks like to think of veganism in this huge way, and how is
Mhm.
it like what does it serve and who does it serve, and like looking at that whole thing intersectionally. So like I want to say that I'm making my peace with it and understanding that like I'm only doing this because I can, right? And there are people
Mhm.
whose like their living experiences that this does not work for them, and I have no right to like place my own opinions on that, right? And
Yeah.
I like, yeah, and looking at like the kind of vegan and vegetarian culture as a whole, like I think it go for so many different cultures of like, you know, the purity of it all, and like
Mhm.
how like purity is kind of infused into a bunch of things that it doesn't need to be, right? So like
Definitely.
I think that that comes to mind a lot when I think about veganism, vegetarianism. I think about it a lot when it comes to social media. I think of the ways that like people attach like very minuscule things to their identities and like what that starts
Mhm.
to create. And yeah, I hope everyone chills out. You
That
know,
was
I hope we all
extremely well
chill.
said. No, seriously, that was extremely well said. Like,
Oh, thank
yeah,
you.
no problem at all. It's very true though.
Thank you.
We actually had a discussion the other day about just like the COVID vaccine and just like how everybody's really reacting to you being vaccinated or you not being vaccinated. And
Yeah,
it's just like, when did everybody become, I don't know, it's just like we can't have a choice. We can't do what we want
yeah,
anymore. It's really
exactly.
weird.
Like our
It's,
bodies, right? Like that sovereignty
yeah,
it like extends to everything, including whether you're getting the vaccine or not. And like, yeah,
exactly.
you know, I totally feel that.
Definitely. So like COVID again, since the pandemic has started, like have you noticed any like increase of people's interest in like farming?
Yes, and
Yes,
so
a lot.
heavily so. Like I'm
That's
so
good.
excited about it. I actually hope where we get to this place where like farmers, gardeners, growers is like not this mythic figure, but like
Hmm.
literally people like really like tap into the fact that we're so capable and we can learn everything that we don't know and take the chances and grow whatever makes sense and like brings ease, whether that looks like a pot on your windowsill all the way up
Yeah.
until like you starting a commune with your friends, you know, like whatever, however it ends up. I hope like I love how many questions people have. I love how
Hmm.
many people are like, can I do this? Because absolutely, yeah, you can, right? So yeah,
Hmm.
I'm so excited about the farming explosion.
That's so cool. Do you feel like there's also been like an increase in people eating more like natural foods just because like the lockdowns and stay at home orders?
Yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
there's like I have like two feelings about that. So there's
I'm like,
like
Vika, you can share them. Don't worry, we got time.
yes, okay. So there's a part of me that's like, you know, again, when we're talking about like natural foods and like, you know, healthy foods and all of that, I feel like it's kind of a
Hmm.
slippery slope because like those words have been like kind of used to weaponize like larger and racialized bodies for a while. But what I'm hoping is going on is that like because we have so much time on our hands, quote unquote, and because all of us are like anxious as heck, quote unquote, you know, like
Yeah.
I hope like maybe that we're stirring ourselves and coming together and like kind of like cooking more, right? And kind of
Hmm.
doing that thing that takes more time and like really getting into it and like people just kind of nourishing themselves more, you know what I mean? And really kind of going through these processes of like trying new flavors, trying new
Hmm.
ingredients, trying new things and like I'm like maybe paying attention to that a little bit more of wanting to expand what they eat or wanting to try to eat what they eat in a different way. So I
Hmm.
hope that's going on and that's super cool too.
That's amazing. And it's crazy that you say that because I'm like, I'm thinking back to like myself and people around me. And I'm just like, I've been cooking every day. My partner, like,
Literally.
he has like one day to cook, or 2 days to cook. But like even him, like I've never really seen him even go into like how detailed he wants to be with like how the meal is going to turn out. And it's pretty crazy. Now I'm just like, I don't even really want to order food out. Like, what's the point?
100%, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's been like really cute between me and all my friends. We're always sending each other the pictures of really dramatic meals we made for no reason. We're just like, it's Wednesday, but I have 3 hours of nothing. Let me make like a freaking pie, you know? So it's cool. Yeah, it's cool.
That's amazing though. And especially like, I feel like our generation, like our millennial generation, we've been like, I guess in like, or we've given like the short end of the stick for a lot of like situations. So I feel like this is something that's like, making us look better to like the older generation.
We're like,
we're
all master chefs now, so don't
literally
talk to us.
Seriously, I'm like, I can grow my own lettuce, like say something.
Literally, I've tried.
Have you? So I was gonna actually say, so I'm Jamaican, and it's funny because my grandma, we've kind of like, we've treated her like you, like we've always like laughed at her, like mocked her, made fun of her, because like she has always like lived off the land. And she will like, whenever she comes home, she's like bringing bush, like a whole bunch of different bushes just so we can have, that's like, this is for this and that's for this. And getting older, I'm just like, I didn't realize the importance of it until I got older. And I'm just like, mommy, like, I don't feel so well. Like, what was that tea that you said I need to boil? And she's like, this and that. But now that like I actually recently moved out and my balcony is like huge, so that's one thing that I really want to start. Like, I actually want to put
garden.
Yeah, I was like, I want to start a garden because I'm like, you know what? It just feels a lot better. I'm like, I remember being able to just go outside of my parents' house and like go pick some lettuce. Now I have to walk to the store, like tomatoes, like cucumber.
It's like it's different, right? Even like I think so much of like walking outside, we have like little mint that grows in our backyard, just like by itself, and going to pick some mint and come back and make tea. Like it's like one thing, but it feels so like embodied almost, you're like, whoa, look at this, I'm on the land,
seriously. And especially
my backyard.
Especially in a place like Canada too, like a lot of times like it's hard to even think of Canada being anything near the tropical environment to grow stuff. So it's like, it's just like a breath of fresh air. It's really nice. I like it a lot. All right, sorry, I was like, we got off topic a little bit.
No worries.
It's okay. So like, well, you said you haven't worked at the company before the pandemic. Since you've been working there, have you ever heard any stories, like, or do people kind of compare what it was before to what it is now?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing for everybody is that like a lot of this work is like very much easier in person, like farming, workshops, events, because like, Black Creek is a super community centered kind of organization. So like there would be people on the farm all the time, and we would have like dinners and movie nights and shows, cute stuff. Like that's why I'm like, oh my God, one day let me be there,
That's so sweet.
And it definitely is like different because like I feel like the ties that people have with Black Creek and like the community around Black Creek are super invested and really have love for the farm, where they're like, this is somewhere we come, right? So I think that change has been the biggest thing from like pre-COVID to into COVID, where just like a lot of that interaction and that hands-onness kind of is lost, but we're adapting, we're trying. So
definitely, as we all have to.
Exactly.
Like the government's not really on our side, so got to figure it out.
Got to stay safe, right? We got to do it ourselves.
Definitely. So like working on the farm, especially like in this climate, do you find any like restrictions or challenges?
So a lot of farming in general is very kind of much like literally going with the wind, like you gotta feel flexible and be able to adapt, because as like climate change is making all the seasons like blur into one everlasting like loop, it makes it kind of like you have to pay attention a little bit more, and you have to do what you can when you can. And if it gets like really warm really early, or you find that it's getting like warm really late, right? Just kind of doing the best and hoping for it. Usually by the middle of the season, like once we get into June, July, it kind of stabilizes a bit. Excuse me, but we've been having super dry summers, so like
Yeah.
keeping up on that water, like keeping up on a lot of those things, and just making sure the plants like adapt well. But I think like it's always a bit of uncertainty in it all, but it works itself out.
That's so cool though. It's like, have you guys ever like wanted to plant anything or just like, or
Well,
like,
I
well,
remember,
actually,
yeah.
I went to my mom's house this weekend and I had actually seen a book that my grandma brought up from Jamaica. It actually shows you like time frame, like it shows you everything about planting and farming and stuff. So
That's
like, do
so
you guys,
sick.
it's so cool. I was like, do you guys like follow
That's
like
so
a
cool.
certain time frame, like a calendar for like planting and
So,
stuff?
well, yeah, I think as it goes, it's like starting seedlings, a lot of seeds. So, because obviously we have a shorter growing season, a lot of the plants that we want to grow, we actually have to start indoors and start them in little flat trays and grow them up
Okay.
until they're ready to be transplanted into the ground.
Okay.
So that usually starts around like May, not May, March, April is when seedlings start to grow. And so you
Mhm.
start seeding them, you put them under the grow lights, you give them these like beautiful conditions to grow in so that they get strong. So by the
Mhm.
time of like now and like, yeah, around this week when the last frost comes, we can start getting ready to put it into the ground so that they've already gotten a head start versus like starting them as seed in the ground now.
Okay.
It would cause like the harvest to be a lot later. So that's like the kind of cycle we go through is just like watching the seasons, right? Like once
Mhm.
like March hits and it's like those kind of nice, warm, sunny days, you're like, it's seed time. And like
Okay.
a lot of the time, like seed packages or different vegetables, they just tell you like on the package how early to start it before last frost. So like some of them are
Mhm.
like 6 to 8 weeks, some of them are 3 to 4 weeks. And
Wow.
so
Okay.
aligning it with that last frost. So a lot of like the beginning of the season is like working backwards to try to make sure if I need to plant this in the ground by like May 20th, when should I start it so that it's ready? And that could be anywhere from like the last week of March until like the pretty much mid-April. So yeah, it's
Okay.
kind of that way of starting to get things slowly, getting them ready for the world and like, yeah, a timeline mainly by the seasons.
Wow. That's so cool. You have to have like a
Yeah,
calendar and like keep everything
yeah,
detailed.
literally counting backwards.
Oh, that's so crazy. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
So I seen on your website you guys do have a lot of programs. Can you like explain to me some of the programs you guys have?
Yeah, so we have programs of the farm market or the
Mhm.
market garden, which is essentially where our harvest share and CSA crop comes from.
Mhm.
This year, actually, we're focusing a lot of the food that we're growing on the emergency food box, which we can get into a little bit later. But essentially, it's kind of like we have the market garden that grows all the food that we essentially sell and share at super affordable and accessible prices. We have the
Okay.
emergency food box that was actually a program that began during the pandemic for to get food like fresh food out to residents who are struggling within the area so
Mhm.
that just as like food supplement for help because obviously all of us are in this like global crisis, right? Um, we have the farm education team, which is where I work. So we run the programming and the curriculum, quote unquote, of like well, this year we've kind of opened it up, or not even opened it up, but of course, because of the pandemic, we wanted to shift, but we also wanted to really highlight and focus on accessible growing methods and on accessible urban agriculture as it is. So we're doing a lot about like environmentalism and how to like get closer to the biodiversity in the Black Creek area, which it's like so bountiful in. We do a lot about like balcony growing, how to grow if you're growing in windowsills, planters, home growers, first time growers. So
Mhm.
we're creating a lot of resources and a lot of workshops for it's kind of split where we have a ton of resources that you can find on our Instagram of just like how to's and what to do and
Oh.
here's some questions. And then we also have workshops on more specialized things of like, you know, these are like this week we had one that was like mushrooms of Ontario and kind of
Hmm.
how to identify the whole thing of mycelium and kind of going
Mhm.
into things that way of like how does this work and also how do you grow your own food. And then we have Urban Harvest, which is really, really cool. This is run by community members who actually are tackling food waste by going to collect fruits and vegetables from like neighboring houses in the Black Creek area and creating like food out of it and going into food series of how to preserve, how to make jams, how to make your own meals. And so that whole side is like, you know, the food literacy side where there's just like, this is what you do with this and this is how you can keep it over the winter and this is how you make this. So I think Urban Harvest is so sick. And yeah, and then we have the emergency food box, which I think at this point has been serving over 3,000 residents actually between the Jane and Finch, Weston, Humber Summit, and Etobicoke. We've delivered 24,426 boxes since the beginning, when we started first back in March 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic. And that equals 3,000. Yeah, and that equals around 390,816 pounds of food for like a 16-pound box that everyone receives weekly and has been since the beginning of that. And we do that in partnership with Food Share.
Wow, you guys do a lot. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so cool though. Like
we're hands all over.
Yeah, that's what we need though, especially like for like more, you know, wholeness in the community for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you did like, I heard you say this term a few times and I kind of want to ask you just like different, like, how did you kind of see environmental like racism come up in like your life, or like what were some of the things that like really popped up in your life and you're just like, okay, I need to do something about this. Like this needs to change.
Yeah, well, I mean, so as I was saying, I grew up in the suburbs. So I grew up in Brampton, but my like the Ghanaian community is super super like prominent in the GTA, like in Toronto, right? So even though I grew up in Brampton, I would be back and forth between Toronto all the time, visiting my mom's friends, and just like everything my mom did was in the city. So when I first went to school and when I first started learning about environmental racism, it really kind of was there was a bunch of little moments, but I think one of the first things I had learned was in Sarnia, if I'm not mistaken, there's like this huge like nuclear waste plant thing that goes on that's also incredibly close to an indigenous reserve. And the actual like health implications that have been going on, and the fact that like and all the organizing work that they had been doing. And so I was started learning this in school, and the ways that like cities actually plan themselves and leave more racialized low income areas closer to like waste plants and to chemical, and to have all these like different incredible like entirely different toxins so close to communities where people are supposed to live, eat, drink the water. Like, let's talk about Flint, you know what I mean? Like things like that, where really and truly like there is an absolute disregard, and it's incredibly tied with income and race. And so when I started learning about environmental racism that way, it started kind of bringing my mind to of like, I think I was in a sociology of like health and wellness class, and they were talking about like, you know, the ways that like obesity is framed, especially in the healthcare system, and how it's just like inherently racist, you know, and like just like flat out. And the ways that like, yeah, that was really kind of even what brought my mind to food access, right? Like my young mind at that point, I was just like, how are people being blamed for their size if they can't even get to like fruits and vegetables? Like that's not fair, you know, like on a very simple basis. And then to learn that there's like organizations on top of advocacy, on top of everything, of everyone being like, yeah, this is messed up. And like that's literally how I got into food justice, really, right? Like I'd seen within like my own body growing up, and just the way that like doctors would constantly tell me that like every single health issue I had, I just had to lose weight, but like also very much understanding that like my body's so capable, and I know this has nothing to do with my weight. Like I literally can't breathe because I have asthma, like, you know what I mean? And like the kind of things that went in that way, and like the insidious ways that all of these things kind of like really just help to like not serve racialized communities, right? And really, really make all their problems, and like I like all the statistics of like, you know, Black and brown communities have the highest heart rate, diabetes, you know what I mean? And it's like though, like, that's not the statistic. Like, why
Mhm.
don't we talk about how many power plants are in a kilometer radius to this one city? You know, why there are no grocery stores on, like, accessible on a
Mhm.
transportation line, like all these different things that, like, are so obviously systemically, like, the systemic barriers of it all, but then trying to make, like, the individual feel bad for it, you know? And that's, like,
Yeah.
how so many things are framed. And that was like, yeah, that really just got me going. And I was like, I gotta do something. I gotta get in on what people are doing already, you know?
Mhm. No, it's actually, it's very true what you say. And like what you said something about like her personal health issues, your doctor being like, oh, like you need to lose weight. Like I like my, if you see me the size of me, like compared to my family, like you'd be like, what? Like what's going on here? So like I'm really slim and like I played soccer for years and
Mhm.
naturally like my whole family's very like, you know, curvaceous and like thick.
Yeah,
So like
totally.
everyone kind of like made me feel uncomfortable after a while because of it. But then I
Mhm,
was just like, you
mhm.
know what? I think everybody in our community has been like brainwashed to think that, you know, we all kind of have to look a certain way in order for us to be healthy.
Exactly, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's like something I'm super unlearning, you know, like I've been active my entire life. I like
Hmm.
am like a freaking Amazon woman, whatever. And you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that should be something that's like seen as a detriment or just because of, you know, that BMI count or whatever the heck it is that
Hmm.
I, yeah, that should be like, that's not my marker of health. You know what I mean? Like, my
Yeah.
marker of health is like my body and mind being together, being nourished and being well. And that's like something that I'm really just trying to drive into myself to really kind of, you know, expand and unlearn from all that colonial like whackness. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like, and it's really sad. I didn't realize how bad it was because I honestly I went to school in the States for like 3 years and then I came back over. And I actually, when I came back over to Canada, I went to school in Belleville, and that's like a half an hour away
Mm-hmm.
from a reserve. And growing up, like
Yeah,
you know, you learn about things, but you don't understand it until like you actually see it. And I had a girl in my
exactly.
program, and she
Exactly.
like literally was traveling to and from a reserve every single day and just like sometimes like seeing like just like the sadness on her face, like you could tell like what she was surrounded by like wasn't good for her kind of thing. And just yeah, like
Yeah,
it's really sad. It's really really sad. So like have
absolutely
you
right.
ever thought of
It's like a
doing
super injustice.
yeah, so like have you ever thought of like doing like, you know, maybe a program that like is an outreach program for like people in reserves or like the company itself? Have you suggested
Well,
anything like that to them?
so a lot of what Black Creek does is
Hmm.
very much in ties and in line with like Indigenous community members
Hmm.
and
Okay.
Indigenous stewardship and leadership as it is. So we always are partnering with and always trying to uplift and always trying to really work with that way of not like of actively including indigenous voices and actively including like the rightful owners of this land within all conversations, especially with
Yeah,
farming, right? So
exactly.
because we work with like yeah, exactly, right? Like we work a lot like with the GTA and kind of
Mhm.
communities around us in that sense, but we definitely would never shy away from doing like harder outreach and more broader outreach to kind of bring like either programming or just community partnerships, right? Because that's
Mhm.
really what it comes down to.
Definitely, definitely
Yeah.
needed. All right. So my last juicy question. So I like personally for me, like I'm like I love history. I study journalism, so that's just fun for me. I've always felt like the BIPOC company, like not company, community, we have always been like tied in with like farming. Do you
Yes.
feel like that, like you already kind of said it, like do you feel like, you know, the Black communities kind of use farming as like a resistance of like oppressive structures, or do you feel like it's like to promote?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. I was like, would you link farming more with like the BIP? With
Yeah,
sorry,
like
sorry, you could continue.
Yeah, absolutely. No. It's super cool. I mean, like 100%, right? Like, I think today farming is seen as like this super exclusive skill, but like
Mhm.
historically and traditionally, knowledge was passed through stories connected to kin and culture, right? And were made
Yeah.
so easily accessible through like words. And so much of that was wrapped up in today of what we call regenerative farming, right? Which is
Mhm.
like essentially the way that agriculture has kind of been in the West, a lot of it actually causes a lot more damage to the environment and certain practices than others. And regenerative farming is like a very active way of bringing nutrients to the soil and also getting nutrients from the soil, right? So it's
Mhm.
like this very kind of symbiotic relationship that so many of it is like rooted in indigenous peoples of all countries all over the world,
Mhm.
and they have such an intimate understanding of the land they lived on and with, and also growing practices that were so ahead of its time. And like even further in like the terms of like resistance, which
Yes.
is kind of my favorite part of it all, like
Yes.
after the Civil War, like black folk owned around like 14% of farmland, and today that's been systemically brought down to 2%.
Wow.
And like I'm thinking of cultural ancestors like Harriet Tubman, who were famed obviously for like the Underground Railroad. But also another thing is like Harriet Tubman was like a knowledgeable herbalist who like
Very.
understood the plants that grew along the way and was able to like lead these people to freedom, but also feed them to freedom, like in a very literal sense, right? And
Mhm.
even with like the dispossession of like Black folks from farmland historically, like they still found ways to grow what they needed to grow and to commune and to eat together, right? So I think it's wild. I think so much of like Fannie Lou Hamer, who started the Freedom Farm Cooperative in 1969 in Mississippi.
Mhm.
And that was intended to be a hub for like agriculture development, but also political organizing. And then
Yep.
like, even again, there's like the Tuskegee Institute and like that what's it called, that gave like Booker T. Watley actually was like a visionary in agriculture work who gave us our like modern day model of the CSA and also foundations of
Mhm.
regenerative farming, and made sure to teach it to other Black folks so that they could have a direct market to actually gain income because of all the systemic barriers that was going
Mhm.
on, right? So like I think today that we continue to adapt it, we continue to move it, we continue to mold it, but like all of this really comes down to like pockets of sovereignty for ourselves. And every time we get curious about like these skills that we already have within us, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
definitely.
farming has always been a part of the revolution. So yeah, I love I love that question.
Like even while you were answering the question, I even thought about like family members that I have actually that live here and work on a farm. And I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
the owners are not like Black. So it's just like, it's
yeah,
really,
right.
and a lot of like, even like for, cause I'm Jamaican. So like, I know a lot of like Jamaican people will come up here to work actually on a farm because like, that's
Absolutely.
like the only thing that they actually know how to do. But realistically, they're not even really making like minimum wage working on a
Exactly.
farm.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Exactly. Farm work already is seen as like weirdly this like labor intensive job, and on top of that when you add race into it, like no one is getting paid as much as they should and as much as they
Yeah.
rightfully deserve, right? And it's again like it's that land ownership that it comes back to, like like Black folk deserve, like BIPOC folk deserve to be able to like be able to trust that the land they're working on is theirs too, and like quote unquote theirs, because like really it's not any of ours, right? But in
Yeah.
that sense too, to be able to establish, build, work with the land in ways that create like intergenerational wealth, intergenerational
Yeah.
stability, you know what I mean? Like land ownership is important in that sense for farming.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Adwa, so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure
Thank you so
speaking
much
with
for
you.
having me.
No problem. I hope you had fun today. I
I
did. I was like,
did.
I learned so much. I'm like, I'm probably gonna hit you up after and be like, I need to plant
Oh my
this.
gosh,
But
please, please, please. Got resources.
all right, I definitely will. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Bye, everybody. I will stop recording.